Well, greetings, my little Bible junkies. How are you? It is so good to see you. Good to be with you again. Thank you for bringing us into your home. Welcome again to Shepherd's Voice Magazine here on YouTube. I want to thank you for your patience again as we have been unable to bring messages absolutely every single week. We've run into all kinds of health issues and all kinds of things going on. So I do thank you for indulging us and offering your patience to us. And also I want to thank you for the feedback that we got back from last week, some of the new technology that we're using on Jim's last message. It's good stuff, using stuff like a teleprompter and all that. That's really great. I'm looking forward to a point when I can type and actually have something to write that we could put into a teleprompter that I could read. So until that time, I'm kind of winging things as far as the notes go. Just unable to really type. I got a bad arm here. So anyway, I don't want to dive into all that stuff again. We've all talked about that before. We thank you for your prayers. I encourage you to please give us more of your prayers. We always need them, Jim and I, and of course everybody else out there. We are to pray for each other, and it's always a benefit when we do. I don't know exactly what I was going to talk about today. I found some things interesting online as usual. Kind of coincided with Jim's message there last week about so much control being brought on by other faith groups and faith systems. He talked about Islam, and I know that surely if you grew up in the Worldwide Church of God, they really believed that they were the only belief system out there that would make it to the first resurrection, as it were, and that sort of thing. And they used, stuff like numbers like the 120,000 and all that, and used that as kind of a divisive thing, which really kind of narrowed the focus of people, especially as the church back in the day got up around 100,000 members. That field of who was going to make it and who wasn't became awful thin. Over time, especially the longer it goes, you start to think, oh, well, if 100,000 make it now, what about 40 years ago or 50 years ago? What about all those people? Maybe they didn't make it into that 120,000. It's just a divisive way of thinking, and it's really not substantiated by Scripture in any way. But, and by all means, make comments if you must. If I'm glowing more than you think is normal, it's because I am. It's 102,000 degrees here. I'm preaching from the middle of a blast furnace. It feels like I have no air conditioning in my home. And I'm recording this in the evening, and it's probably 25, 27 degrees Celsius. So it's in those high temperatures, gets very muggy. So if I'm a little glowy, that's what that's from. I remember as a kid, there was always the meme culture hadn't evolved to, what it is online. But, there was always the poster of the kitten hanging on the branch, hang in there, you got this, that sort of thing. And other funny ones, the "you want it when" little comic was always kind of funny, if you remember those. But so much of what gets put on memes nowadays, and it's part of this whole self-help culture, that kind of came out of the 70s and 80s. And a lot of things that came out of that, a lot of the verbiage, a lot of the vernacular, ended up, being kind of applied to Christianity. And if you listen to guys like Joel Osteen, which I don't recommend you do, and T.D. Jakes and so forth, Creflo Dollar, these guys, these wealth and prosperity preachers, they kind of had that stuff cross over into their theology, let's call it that, and they use things like, follow your heart. And that's one of the things on this little list of things that I've got things that Jesus didn't say. And I'll use that as kind of my segue into what we're talking about today. And there are some things that Jesus didn't say, but there's lots of stuff that he did that is so much more valuable and so much more important. And I can't understand sometimes why we kind of default to relying on ourselves or our own intellect or our own, sociology, that kind of thing, right? So what are some things that Jesus didn't say? Okay, and you probably recognize them as things that a lot of your average self-help guru does say. Okay, stuff like follow your heart. Follow your heart. Jesus didn't say that. Jesus didn't say follow your heart. He didn't even say be true to yourself. Now, these are both core elements of the kind of the self-help. If you can envision it, you will make it happen. Manifesting, that sort of thing. So be true to yourself. But what did he say? He actually said in Matthew 4:19, he says, follow me. He said, follow me as an invitation to discipleship and a call to action. And this phrase is throughout the Gospels, and it emphasizes the importance that needs to be placed on imitating Jesus Christ and his actions and his teachings, and ultimately leading a transformed life. That's the doing the work of God. That's the work that gets applied to the faith that needs to be there to make faith actually manifest itself. And in opposition to be true to yourself, he said to be his disciple, that we're to deny ourselves and take up our cross and, again, follow me, basically, is what he says. And that's in Matthew 16:24. So we're supposed to place less and less and less and less emphasis on what the world has to offer and the validation that the world has to offer, the people in it. And I think this also transcends to fear, because if we're talking about coming up in, say, something like worldwide, the fear that people live within now, when it comes to not, say, observing a Sabbath rite or the Sabbath rite or observing it at all, or like Jim brought up, the clean and unclean meats, this sort of thing, when whether or not we perfect those aspects or have those as an intrinsic part of our makeup is not going to add not one iota to our salvation. The only thing that adds that kind of value to our life, folks, is in fact faith in Jesus Christ. And Jim brought that up last message there. When he's talking in Galatians 2, where if salvation was brought by works, then or the works of the law. And we can't get in there and start picking out which laws we want to or don't want to pay attention to. It says the works of the law. It's talking about the law as a whole. If salvation came as through works of the law, then Jesus died for nothing. And that is just that is not the spot we need to find ourselves in. That is a terrible spot to find ourselves in. That is holding on to that kind of thinking. Jesus did not die for nothing. When we talk and think in terms of Jesus dying to take God's pain away from the natural pain that we would gotta bring to the table, and from the suffering that got brought about by Satan running interference on everything that he wanted to do or wants to do for this period of time that we're involved in, boy, oh boy, that's not nothing. It's not nothing that Jesus died for. It was there's a restorative nature there. And along the lines of that, be true to yourself. This is why Jesus said in John 14:1, he said, believe in me. Believe in me. And I remember this one ringing out all the time, from the pulpit when I was a kid. John 14 and verse 6. Sorry, not verse 1, verse 6, where Jesus declares, "I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me." Now that's a pretty astonishing declarative statement when. It must have fallen on the ears of those that heard that kind of roughly, because up until that point, to have God's ear, you had to go through this certain set of sacrifices and be there on this day between the sunsets and this and that and that and that. Whereas Jesus Christ is saying, no, not only are you going to come to the Father, but the only way to come to the Father is through me, because I am the way, the truth, and the life. And that's because he is this exact reflection of the Father, that he can say, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So that in no way implies that we can believe in ourselves. I think it's been pretty obvious to me, and it should be to you over time, that belief in ourselves is flawed. There's a threat there, and that threat there is that we're gonna bollocks that up something fierce. And when it comes to anything holy, we certainly are going to make a mess of it. So this faith thing comes in to be pretty important. And so there isn't this idea of believe in yourself. And I have heard this. I've heard this from your televangelist types. There used to be a bunch of them on TV. Now there's a million of them on YouTube. And they'll fall back on stuff like that. And I often wonder if they actually know what they're saying, or if they understand the depth of the wrongness that they are embarking on. But Jesus didn't say believe in yourself. He didn't say believe in yourself. He said believe in me. Believe in me. And this one really bugs me, because I see it all the time, and I hear people talking about their truth. And one of the things I've heard it said is live your truth. Live your truth. Be an expression of your truth. Speak your truth. And I said, this one really bugs me, because Jesus Christ takes ownership of a lot of things, and there's been a lot of responsibility taken by God and by Jesus Christ for this creation that is his. And yet people say that truth somehow is subjective to the individual. And that's not the case. The whole plan of God is based on truth. And Jesus Christ said in John 14, also, he said, I am truth. Okay, that was verse 6 of John 14, still in John 14. We don't live our truth. We are to be living examples of Jesus Christ's truth. We are, and that is Jesus Christ as truth. We are to exemplify that truth. We are to recognize that truth and to put that kind of truth out there, so to speak. But certainly not live our truth. We are supposed to live according to the truth that is Jesus Christ. And so that one kind of sticks in my craw, because somehow that gets perverted into, well, if you're living your truth and your truth is aligned with God's truth, well, then that's all right. If it's aligned with Jesus Christ, then that's fine. It's getting things completely backwards, is that we're supposed to understand truth as it is given to us and presented to us, shared with us, lived through us in Jesus Christ. And the indwelling of the Holy Spirit is supposed to be this, and reflecting God in the truth that we project into the world. Being truthful, not just in telling the truth as opposed to telling a lie, about living a truthful life and being true to the convictions that we have decided we are going to take part in and be part of when we have decided, once we have heard the gospel of Christ, that we are going to devote ourselves that way and in that manner, giving ourselves over to Christ Jesus. That's not living our truth. That's not living our truth. That's living according to the truth that is Jesus Christ. And I'll tell you, one of the next ones I'll tell you about is one of the ones that I think is a real dumb one. You see it, if you haven't seen it, these things written in these exact words and misappropriated to or misapplied by ascribing them to something that Jesus Christ said, understand that it's the essence of these things that is really at the root of it. That is the problem, and that is what gets disseminated and gets repeated and becomes kind of one of those things that muddies the water and clouds things up and makes people confused when they're thinking about, Jesus Christ and what did he say? What did he say? What did he do? How do these things, apply to me, the individual, living now in the year 2025, as it were? How do these things come to be? Well, it's like the fear and control issues and so forth that they become generational because of repetition, and by applying them to everything in our lives, and often where it ought not be applied, and this becomes so problematic in our lives because we begin to think that, well, everything we've been told about what Jesus said and what God told us to listen to, and what we read in the writings of Paul and Peter and so forth in the New Testament, of things that Jesus said, these things can become kind of conflated, and we really got to kind of bear down and separate these things, because this last one here that I'll mention about things that he didn't say, that were on this list here, this fifth one here, is as long as you're happy, and if it makes you happy, then this is motivation enough to do it. And I mean, it's actually one of the underpinnings of how the Church of Latter-day Saints grabs people, is because when they start reading, they get them to read their literature, and they get them to make decisions and judgments on their spiritual life based on how what they read makes them feel. So if it makes you feel good and makes you feel happy, then it must be true. Where, I probably don't have to sit here for very long to tell you that that's not a very good gauge of determining where we're going to point ourselves when it comes to our spiritual lives, because sometimes it ain't all that happy, and sometimes it is kind of a nightmare, sometimes it is kind of rough, and I'm here to tell you I've experienced it. I know you have. It's what we do in the face of how bad it can be that is really important, and that's why it's so much more important about our reliance. And because that's where we have to come out to, is to rely on God to guide us through these things for the better or for the worse. Okay? It's what we do in the face of a calamity or a disaster or just a bad time, right? As long as you're happy. It really is a kind of a dumb one. And it's not that happiness, Christ says, I come that they might have life and have it more abundantly. He's not saying that we shouldn't be happy. That's not the case. That's not the case. It's about priorities and where we prioritize being happy in the short term against long term, right? See, as long as you're happy, if we're kind of satiated on that kind of a level, think of it this way. Satan went at Jesus Christ when he was at his weakest. This is how we know that Jesus Christ was fully human. Satan went at him when he was in the wilderness at day 40. You know, the last possible moment when Jesus was at his absolute weakest. Okay, that's when he really went at him. I think what we need to realize is that when we are worn down, when we're at our worst, that's actually when Jesus Christ is at his strongest in us, and that's why. And that Satan, you know, he likes to get us to a point where we're just kind of happy and malleable, right? But it's easy to get you there if you're caught at a weak moment. I hope I'm not being too convoluted in what I'm saying. But if you're caught at an extremely weak moment and Satan gets his little teeth into it, his hooks into you, and helps you with giving up, you know, and putting a whole lot of quit into your system, then to try to buoy you back up to a sense of well-being and all that actually isn't all that hard. And you can be satiated then by short-term things. Okay, I hope you're following me where I'm going with that. And that could be anything. It could be anything. It could be food, drugs, sex, anything. Shiny new cars, big houses. It's how it goes. Influence over people. The ability to put fear in people, make them do what you want. You see where I'm going with this? This is a lot of those people have their reward already, and we've read scriptures about that. But in Matthew 16:26, it says, "What will it profit a man to gain the world but lose his soul?" That is to lose his long-term, eternal potential. You don't want to turn that in on short-term stuff. Because Jesus didn't say, oh, make sure you're part of the right group. You know, the Jehovah's Witnesses, I don't mean to bash other people a whole bunch today, but I'm going to anyway. The Jehovah's Witnesses will tell you, you know, it's in their literature. You can look it up for yourself. It's all online. That, you know, if you're not part of the Jesus Christ organization, they use that term, organization, their organization. Boy, oh boy, you're in with the crowd, the big crowd of ne'er-do-wells and irretrievables, right? And it's just not how it is. So I want to expand then, I guess, on some things that Jesus Christ did say. What are some things that he did say? Go to John 16:33. John 16:33. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. So whatever this world can throw at us, Jesus Christ has already determined that he has overcome it. He wins. And take heart. It says, take heart. That means don't be moping around and dragging people down with you. Don't be getting hung up on a bunch of control issues. And that's because he said, peace I leave with you. This is John 14:27. He says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. And then he compares himself to the world. He says, I don't give like the world gives. I'm not giving this to you like the world gives. So don't let your hearts be troubled. And don't be afraid. So all of the disappointments that you've probably run into in the way that the world gives and guarantees things, he's saying, no, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid. I'm not giving like the world's giving. I'm giving like God gives. I'm giving like my Father gives. I'm giving like I give. That means something entirely greater. Matthew 11:26-30. This is where Jesus Christ has taken responsibility for all of this. And that's how God has taken responsibility for all of this. Because in verse 26 he says, yes, Father, because this was your good pleasure, all things have been entrusted to me by my Father. That's all authority has been given to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone whom the Son desires to reveal him. He's telling you to put all the trust there. That's where our faith is rooted and grounded. Verse 28, he says, come to me, all of you who are worried and burdened. Anybody out there feeling worried and burdened and weary? You ever been there? I know I have. And I will give you rest. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, because I am lowly and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. You will find rest for that which makes you you, including your eternal potential. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's because he did say all things are possible through me. You getting the encouraging nature of the things that he actually said? Let's go to chapter 28, Matthew. He said, surely I'm with you until the end of the age. Now, he said that to the disciples then, and they probably didn't have a whole lot of grasp on the grander and more expansive nature of the way and the things he did say sometimes. But being this far removed from it, being this far into the future from that, I take a lot of comfort. And as it says, surely I'm with you until the end of the age. And that includes the age that we're in. We have this eternal living Savior that is determined to pull us through. And unlike everything else that can fall away and rot or fall to disease, the elements, well, Jesus transcends all that too, doesn't he? Because all that authority over those things has been given to him. And that's what he said just a couple of verses before Matthew 28 and 20. In verse 18 of Matthew 28, he says, he came near to them and he said, all authority has been given to me in heaven and in earth. So isn't that a positive for us? Isn't that encouraging for us? Because the responsibility of that kind of authority has been actually lifted off of our shoulders. The responsibility of going through sacrifice and all that sort of thing to come to a place of open and truthful communication with God has been dealt with because of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, who came and took that piece of the puzzle. And he said, no, I'm that sacrifice, and now you have until the end of the age. I'm here with you to get you through this unfettered access, this ability to act on this access you've been given, and this faith you've been given. You've been given this ability. Because he didn't say, be in the right group. And he didn't even say, get good at this stuff. It's about recognition and faith and hearing and understanding and accepting. for all the reasons we've given today, there's a problem when we revert to things like belief in ourselves, living our truth. These are poor substitutes for the truth and for the life that Jesus Christ is and offers us. And if I may be so bold, I don't believe that Jesus Christ wants or even implied that we should feel threatened by him. We, as those who have believed and conducted ourselves in a manner of belief and baptism and honoring Jesus Christ and that holy name and hearing him, as God said, hear him, this is my son. That's not a threat for us. There remains no more judgment for those that are in faith in him. So when any group, I don't care if they're a Christian group or an Islamic group or whatever group, if they're preaching a Jesus Christ that is threatening you, or they are threatening you to kind of hammer you like a square peg into a round hole, into their way of belief and saying things like, you're not going to make it if you're not with this group or that group or this way of thinking, folks, that's threatening, and that isn't how Jesus Christ wanted to share his message. He was taking people that were believing and imitating him and told them to go out and go into the world. And he says, if you follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. And generally speaking, you don't go fishing with a stick, you go with bait. And that bait is definitely an outwardly visible life lived in love and truth in Jesus Christ that extends to those around us. We're useful to God when we're useful to the folks that he puts us around or puts around us. And that's something I pray about every day. But folks, you know what? I'm gonna shut it down there. I'm gonna leave this as a bit shorter of a message. I want to maybe to digest a few of the things I said today. I know I've been a little bit all over the place. But I do want to thank you for taking the time to be with us. Leave us a message or a little bit of feedback. Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Share this with anybody you see fit. Maybe some people that you don't see fit. But share it all as much as you can. We really do appreciate it. We do appreciate the feedback. As I said, hit the bell icon, get notified whenever these messages go up. And to do that, make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. Brethren, thank you. We love you. And we'll see you next time on Shepherd's Voice Magazine. Take care.